In this lesson, we'll add the stairs to the little alcove in our room. Alright, so let's say that in this area we want to add some steps going up in this direction and then turn the corner and go up into kind of a door in this wall here. Now we could go in and actually build these with polygons, with cubes, or whatever we want, but we can actually use parametric surfaces or geometry just like the windows and doors that we've been using. So to do this, we're going to go into the Create panel, and we'll go to Geometry, and instead of Standard Primitives, we'll go all the way to the bottom, and we'll find Stairs. And here you can see we've got a spiral stair, U-type stair, straight, and an L-type stair. Let's go ahead and choose an L-type stair. Okay, and the first kind of action that we're going to do is to drag out the first row of steps, and we're going to come this way. Okay, so we'll drag them out in this direction. Okay, and if it's not perfect when you drag it out, that's fine. We can modify it a little bit later. You can see what's happening in our perspective as well. Okay, those are completely flat right now, but you can kind of see where the steps are. Now I'll release and drag in this direction where I want the next kind of row of steps to go. Okay, and I'll click again, and the next drag will be to actually create the rise. So as I drag, you can see how that changes there in the perspective. Okay, so I'll drag that out. Now let's go ahead and go to Move, and we'll just kind of move this into position here. Okay, so that's already fairly close to what I want, but let's go ahead and take a look at how we can change some of these settings. So in our Modify panel, we've got the L-type stair selected. The first thing you'll see is the type. We can choose Open, which is what we have now, Closed, okay, which is, you can see how that's kind of a closed box there, and then Box, which takes that all the way down to the floor. It gives you very kind of a solid look. Okay, I'm going to choose the Open. Okay, you can also choose what geometry is generated. So if I turn off the carriage, you can see that turns off that carriage underneath, and now it's just kind of floating in the midair. I can turn on stringers, and that gives you the stringers on the outside of the steps, or I can turn on both. I can also turn on handrails if I want one on the left or the right, or both. Okay, and then you can get paths for those to be able to use with other types of geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the handrails and the stringers, leave the carriage, and now we can look at this layout. So here you'll see settings for the length 1 and length 2, okay, corresponding to these L arms there. We've also got the width, which we can see here. You can kind of change the width from here to here. Okay, let's go ahead and bump that up. We can also change the angle, which is really neat. In this case, we want to have kind of a right angle, but you could dial that angle down and get kind of a really neat effect there. You can see that. I'll set that back to 90. Okay, and then an offset you can change, and you can see how that moves this whole line. Offsets that. So I'll kind of move that into the wall there. Now the rise is our next section, and that basically tells you kind of how high that is going to be. So the overall rise, we can kind of dial that down a little bit. We want to get something a little bit more subtle. Okay. And then you've got the riser height. Sorry. Okay. And the steps, the thickness of the steps is pretty self-explanatory. We go ahead and dial the thickness of those steps down a little bit. See how that makes them a little bit thinner. And then we've got rollouts for the carriage. Okay, so we can make that. You can see how that changes the kind of the shape of that, the depth of that carriage. So it can go all the way in, or you can make it kind of a very thin carriage. You can also change the width if you want to make it something a bit thicker, more substantial. If we open this little guy right here, the carriage spacing, you can actually change the count. So if we dial that up to 2, you can see there's now 2 carriages there. You can also change the spacing and get a lot of other options in here. You can divide evenly, and that just tells it how those carriages are spaced apart. And so you get a lot of options in here in the carriage spacing. I'll go ahead and close that. And now if I dial down the width, you can see that I can dial that down for both of those. Okay. If I turn that off, you can see how that affects this back part of the carriage. Alright, the railings, if you have any railings, you can come in here and change the values for those, and also the stringers, you can change values for those, assuming that you have those turned on, and we don't. So I'm going to go ahead and get something that is kind of looks like that. So you can kind of do your own thing if you want, get kind of a neat little effect. You could even do kind of a spiral if you wanted to try that, and you just drag that out in the same type of way, just to create a little bit of a different shape. But I'm liking where this is going, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this stairway the way it is. Okay, assuming that we want to have kind of a doorway that's in here. Okay, so that's one way to create some stairs very, very quickly. And just keep in mind that you've got also this just a kind of straightforward stairway, and also a U-type stair, so it would be kind of like this, and then it would come back around. So in case you needed to get kind of a apartment, where you're kind of walking around the stairway up and down, and also a spiral stair, which is pretty self-explanatory. All right, so that's one way to create some stairs in here. So kind of play around with the settings and get it the way that you want it. I think that looks pretty good. I might want to actually make this a bit longer to pull this out. You see, so I want to go ahead and make that a bit longer there, and pull this out a bit. Okay, and I'll pull this back. Okay, and then just kind of tweak things a little bit here. You can see how that kind of changes it based on the width of the step. So once it gets to a certain point, I can go ahead and, if it needs to be tweaked a little bit, I can go ahead and just scale that down. All right. Okay, so I'm going to play this to death, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop right there, tweaking those settings. And in the next lesson, we'll come in and actually cut out the door here for this where these steps are going. Now we're not going to see through here. We're going to assume that most of our our shots are going to happen over here, let's say. So we're not going to concentrate too much on there. Maybe we can add that at a later date, another room over there or something. But right now we just want to have kind of a doorway there, and so we can get that hole in there using Booleans. So we'll see how we can do that in the next lesson.